Hey, this is Charlie, and this is going to be a quick review of my CXRacing Downpipe installed in my 3000 GT. This is a 94 VR4, but this downpipe will fit any year 3000 GT or Stealth as long as it's the twin turbo model. I purchased it through Revenge Performance, but it came from CXRacing. I think they're a company out in California. I'm going to go over what I like about it, what I don't like about it, what I had to modify, just give my honest review of it. So let's start with the good stuff that I like about it. It's stainless, which is nice. It's got these built-in flex sections, which is good. I feel that they help if you don't have solid motor mounts. Mine are poly, but your motor is going to rock some, and I feel like those will help with the motor rocking. They also will help fill in any tolerances. If you've ever bolted headers, turbos, O2 housings up to the motor, there's room for play. You can bolt that header up, you could slide it up a little, you could slide it down a little, left or right. Same with the turbo, same with the O2 housings. So to get the front flange and the rear flange to fit perfectly flush without having a flex section in the middle and to work for every 3000 GT ever made, I think is pretty near impossible unless you have your turbos, your headers, and O2 housings loosened up, bolt the downpipe to it, then tighten everything. I think if you're trying to design a downpipe that's got to fit flush and not leak, you got to have some kind of flex section in between the front and rear, just so that it'll bolt up to every car. So that's good, the flex sections. The next thing that I like is the actual fitment. So I did test fit this on my motor while the motor was out of the car, and the front flange was perfectly flush and the rear flange was also perfectly flush. And I'll post some pictures of that as well. You can see that the rear has the 2 holes on each side. That's so it can bolt up to the 1st gen or 2nd gen. The factory rear O2 housing is clocked differently between 91 to 93 and the 94 to 99 models, or 94 to 96 if you're a Stealth. So that way one downpipe can fit any year 3000 GT or Stealth. So that's pretty much the good. Let's talk about the stuff that I don't like. And to start, I'm gonna grab this piece of pipe. So this was part of the downpipe, and it went right here roughly, and it had the flex section, which I said is good, but I didn't like where they put it. You can see that the flex section obviously is wider than the pipe, and you can tell that when it's right here, it was hitting the 6-speed transfer case. So it was jammed right up against the side of it. I couldn't pry it away. I posted, other people said they had the same issue. Some people ran it and it was fine. One guy said his rubbed and his flex section broke after 3 years. So I didn't want to deal with that. So I added my own flex section in the front. This is from Ace Race Parts. And I ordered a second one just because shipping was the same for 1 or 2. I figured I'd have a spare or something I could use on a future project. So these are 304 stainless all the way through. They're affordable, they have good reviews. So that's what I put in the front. And by doing that, I also added a piece of stainless here so that I just have pipe running by the transfer case, so you can see I have plenty of space now. It's not gonna rub or hit. The next thing I had to modify was the rear of it. This isn't CXRacing's fault. This is just because I have a V-band on my catback, so I needed to add a V-band onto the pipe here. I knew I'd have to do this, knew it going in, so that's what I had to do to add the V-band. So again, no fault of CXRacing there. The next thing that I ran into is this front flange. You can see the exhaust studs stick down, and there's nuts that turn onto those studs, obviously, the factory nuts, and there wasn't enough room on each side. The pipe is so wide that you can't even start the nuts on the factory studs. They just hit the side of the pipe if you try to turn them. The side of the pipe was dimpled from CXRacing, meaning they knew there was tight clearance there. They probably hammered it in, some on each side, but it wasn't hammered in enough. I had to take a ball peen hammer and dent it in even further so that the nuts would start, and then I could fit a socket over each nut. So that was kind of minor, but I still had to do it. Lots of putting it on, seeing if I could get the socket and nut on. If not, take it off, hammer it in some more, and repeat. And then lastly, the thing that bugged me is the O2 sensor placement. So there was a front O2 bung over here on the side. I eliminated it when I moved the flex here because I don't need it. That one was fine, but the one they put in the rear is bad for several reasons. The most obvious one is it's pretty much pointed down. It's going to be the lowest point on the car. You're not going to want to have an O2 sensor and a wire hanging out here. It's just going to get torn off or scraped, and if that's what your fuel map is based on, you don't want to risk that. The second reason is it's pointed up. If you've ever read any wideband manual, they'll tell you when you install your sensor, have it above the horizontal plane, because it's not good for sensors to be pointed up, because moisture can collect on the end of it and it'll shorten the sensor's life. The third reason being, I believe they intend this to be for the rear bank, but by having it down here in the pipe, you'd also be calculating some air fuel measurements off the front bank, because this is going to read any exhaust that comes through it. It'd be better off up higher where it's only reading exhaust from the rear. So I didn't like the placement there. I asked if I could buy it without any bungs welded on, and I'd put my own on, and they wouldn't sell it. I offered to pay more money to have them not put bungs on, and they said they couldn't do that. They did say that they're made in-house, but I have a feeling they probably come from China or overseas somewhere. So I eliminated the front one with a flex section. I left the rear one as is, and I added my own bung in the rear for my wideband sensor. And this is what my ECU AAM version 2 uses for all my air fuel calculations, so it's important. It's angled correctly, and I've got it kind of zip tied and away from the drive shaft. I actually run this wire above this heat shield and then back over, and I've got it zip tied there, so it's not going to interfere with anything. So that's kind of the stuff I don't like. It was around $220. I wish I didn't have to modify stuff, but I did. Sadly, there's not a lot of downpipe options anymore. If you went back 10 years ago, there was probably 6 or 7 different companies you could buy downpipes from. Some of them fit really well. Now we're pretty much stuck with CXRacing, which isn't perfect. 3SX, they do make good downpipes, but I don't like that they don't have the front pre-cat built in, meaning you'll have an extra flange here, so you have an extra flange you have to contend with. And I don't like their swivel fittings. I know they do it because it makes it easy, but I don't like how the swivel fittings bolt against each other. I feel like it doesn't make as good of a seal for some reason. And then you have eBay. And this is an old Megan Racing downpipe that I have. And I had this on my car, and you can see what had to be done to it. The flanges didn't line up well. The holes for the studs had to be widened, cut out with a plasma cutter. And you can see the design is a little different. These are 2 pipes that go into one, whereas the CXRacing is more of a stock style, where the top pipe just comes into this bigger bottom pipe. It's probably not as efficient as this other style. This is probably more efficient as far as exhaust flow, but this gives you more room. It's a lot easier to get a socket up here and tighten the bolt on each side than it is with this style exhaust. There are other eBay exhausts. I did buy a downpipe off eBay before. It was from, I think it was the seller was I Love Taco, and it had awful fitment. I had to do the same thing with a plasma cutter to get the exhaust to even slip over the studs. The holes are too small. And then once I could get it to bolt up, the rear part of the I Love Taco exhaust was actually hitting the underside of my car. It was kind of angled up. I ended up scrapping it, just calling it a loss. So yeah, I guess CXRacing or 3SX are probably your two safest options if you're handy with a welder or have a friend or don't mind the flex section hitting the transfer case. Go with the CXRacing. If you want perfect fitment but don't want the extra flange in the front and want to deal with the swivel flanges on the end and pay a little bit more money, probably 3SX. So hopefully that's been helpful. Let me know if you have any questions.